So let me tell you about my experience getting into high ticket sales. And what I really want to do is first understand, first help you understand, right? Explain to you so that you can understand better about how I'm living my life in the bigger picture. Because high ticket sales, I understand, could be like life changing as a career if you get into it because of a few different things. The income potential to make income. Not that you get into a high ticket sales job and you're guaranteed to make a certain amount of money. Quite the opposite, because you're not guaranteed to make a certain amount of money just because you get into the industry or anything. Because we have people who are in sales who don't make any money at all, as low as $0. And you have people who are in sales and who are making hundreds of thousands. And nowadays you got people who are hitting 7 figures, which means they're making at least $1 million a year doing sales work. So it's a broad range. They'll say sales is both the lowest paid job and the highest paid job at the same time. Okay. And it all kind of comes down to the specific sales role that a person is executing on. And what I want you to understand about me though, is that I've been in sales for years. I've been in sales for over 12 years. Maybe I'm not even counting properly anymore, but I have been in sales for a long time, over a decade. And with all that experience, I go into high ticket sales and see what this is. Now going into high ticket sales is like a little bit different, but not so much. Okay. Especially if you've had like real sales training, great sales experience, like on a great team, dealing with real like solid clients, I guess is the way I want to describe it, because you can have a lot of things going well in your sales role, but without these solid clients, you're not going to learn the full cycle. And what that full cycle is that you have somebody you sold once, so they've already become a client, but now you go and you can sell again, or you can keep them as a client, make sure they're satisfied type of thing. Because in sales, we should be helping people make decisions for their life. And when they make that decision, they will enter the transaction with us. And so in exchange for money, we are representing a company that's going to do something for them and help them improve their life, reach their goals, such and such. So essentially in sales, we should be looking at it as the whole cycle. Now, plenty of people, and I know plenty of people who were very successful, and especially in high ticket sales, that do not think about it this way. And I just interject some passion in here to let you know that I see them. If you're one of those people, I see you, mofo. It's not good. It's not real sales. In real sales, we're taking leadership. We're taking leadership in the conversations, helping a person make a decision. But we are also taking leadership on the team that we are representing. And what we should stand up for is ethical practices. Like number one, like that shouldn't be hard to do. It should not be hard to do. For anybody that feels it is hard for them to do, you are just still at like a junior level in sales. Even if you can make a lot of sales, you are at junior level. And I think that the point is that those people, because of their performance as an individual, they get put into leadership positions. And because they're missing certain parts that make a good leader, then they don't influence their team the right way. So those people continue to develop in their sales career and also are missing some important stuff. And one of those things, and I've seen in high ticket sales, is this idea that when we make the transaction with somebody, it is still the salesperson's job as a leader, not their role in the company as a leader. In sales, we should be identity-based. The work that we do, our performance should be identity-based. That's what works best. Not pretending you're one thing at work and you're something else outside of it. You are one person, and in that role, you will fulfill it. And the way you approach your work is highly, highly dependent on who you are, how you see yourself, right? And so that stuff is super important. I get onto that kind of like a little tangent, but I want you to understand in the bigger picture what's driving my life, because I've been in sales a long time. What's this whole high ticket sales thing? And I want you to understand that purpose is driving my life. I have a belief that my life has a purpose, right? And I'm trying to discover what that purpose is. I think a lot of times I'm trying to invent things for my life. Like I tell myself I'm designing my life to become exactly what I want it to be. And so I'm being intentional every single day to make sure I'm building that life that I want. Now, doing the work and building the life is one part to it. And it's hard. It's very, very hard. But you know what's crazy is that there's something else that's just as hard, if not harder, and that is the design, putting the design to your life together. And a lot of times, in order to learn more about design, you have to start building. So, for example, when we build houses, like this is an analogy, right? When we build houses, we have a blueprint. You have somebody who kind of like verifies that's a good blueprint. Okay, cool. Based on whatever makes a good blueprint, okay? But then you got to start building it. And some things are not planned out in the blueprint, because you start building and then those decisions can kind of be made along the way. Now, somebody, let's say, for example, like what type of paint to use on the walls doesn't need to be in a blueprint, but for somebody who thinks about choosing which paint to use on the walls, they can use information from the blueprint to help them start thinking about what paint to put on the walls. Now, them starting to think about which paint to use is not them actually doing the work, but thinking about the work. So they're designing. So the designing part can start to happen. Now, it's funny because it's like the design work of building the house, like at least like the foundation and the framing means all the wood that gets put together first. You know, like when you see a naked house, like it's getting built and all you see is like all the wood pieces. So that's framing. So framing and the foundation is framing's on top of the foundation. Different types of foundations out there, okay? But you got framing, all the wood pieces on top of some type of foundation that sits on the earth, okay? And for those people who are thinking about those things, their design is in the blueprint, and then they start building, okay? The person who's choosing the paint on the walls, their design, right, can start with the blueprint information, and they start thinking about, okay, we got a wall over here. Okay, we got this over here. What's going on? And where's the location of this place? I don't know, whatever factors go into them choosing which paint. The designing is happening, but they may not begin building until, they might not be finished designing until they're already midway through the building. It sometimes kind of happens, but I just use the analogy to kind of point to what I'm talking about designing. And in my life, I'm designing, right? And for some things, I do have blueprints because I know there's a foundation and there's framing that gets built on top, and I know what comes after the framing part, right? And so I can kind of like see those things through. But as I start to build out my life, like for example, I knew I wanted kids, a family of my own, and now I have a wife, 2 daughters, and my daughters are both toddlers now, walking, talking. One of them even goes to school, and we're getting them both started with extracurriculars. The other one's going to start school later this year. So it's kind of like we are already in it. We are building, and we have a foundation here in our household. But as I keep building, I am continually designing, right? And how I want to be a parent, how I want to show up as a parent for my kids as they move from toddler into full adolescence. And so I'm making a point about how I see my life in the bigger picture, right? And how I'm designing my life. And what I think is that many times I feel driven by purpose, and it's partly I'm discovering that purpose, but other times I feel kind of like I'm just in the motion, knowing I'm driven by purpose, but what I feel is I'm inventing. So it kind of feels like sometimes I'm discovering purpose, sometimes I'm designing and inventing, so it feels like I'm creating purpose. What's really happening for me, right? And it has to go back to spirituality, so I do have to bring that up real quick. I'm very spiritual, and a lot of my content is on spirituality. And right now, during this time, we're in at the end of April here in 2026, by the way. But right here during this time, I've been doing a lot of content on purpose, because what happened to me was I needed to have faith as I was doing a lot of designing, and I was building and then go back to designing and then building, right? And real quick to share with you, what's happening there is that you start to build and then you figure out I need to design better. So then you start to design and you're like, this is too much designing. I need to start building. So then you start building, and right, some of the disappointments that come up is like, I am building the wrong thing, or I'm building the wrong way. Fuck, kind of feels like a waste. Waste really hurts me personally a lot. I know I'm not the only person. I know there's plenty of people who probably are bothered by waste. They want to be efficient. And so to waste time, most important, waste money, energy, right? But waste time. Damn. It's building the wrong way. Why didn't I catch that? Why didn't the design is off. I go back to designing. And I want to make sure design is so good, so good, so good, so good, so that I don't run into that building problem again, where I build the wrong way or the wrong thing. And so I want to go back to designing and do it thoroughly enough to make sure I limit the waste once I go into building. Now, these two things are going to keep happening in life, so I have to accept that they're both going to keep happening. And the problem that happens is, like, if you stay in design mode too much and you're not building, your design is not going to be that good, because you need to be building to get insight about designing. So what I realized is, okay, I need to have them both going at the same time. And so what happened there was I am designing my life continually, but I'm trying to build things in real time. And I'm going to go over a timeline now to help you understand what I'm talking about. But this point about designing and building is such a challenge when you're doing them both at the same time, because you have to go and take action. You have to go and do some building, not really knowing what the plan is. Like, what? Yeah, so sometimes you're kind of thinking on the spot, which is hard. And then if you have bad performance thinking on the spot, which many of us will experience, like, damn, we did not do good. And it's because I was thinking on the spot. And then you have to say, okay, well, that's going to continue to happen. I can't just stop. I can't just hold myself back and avoid being in. So that's the thing, is like, I can't hold myself back because I'm avoiding to be in a position where I'm gonna have to think on my feet and I may mess up. Yeah, if I'm in that position where I have to think on my feet, I may mess up. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's not necessarily that I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to avoid messing up, yeah. But I'm not necessarily trying to avoid being in that position under pressure where I have to think on my feet. I'm not trying to necessarily avoid that, simply because I might make a mistake, right? So that's like one of the biggest things. Don't hold yourself back because you're designing. A lot of other ways to say this are more commonly known, like analysis by paralysis. A lot of people fall into that. Avoid that, right? Overthinking, waiting until you have like the perfect plan, waiting until you have it all figured out, right? So you hear these kind of advice. You don't have to wait till you have it all figured out. Just take one step at a time. So these kinds of advice, right, really resonated for me. But spiritually, what it meant for me was that I needed to have faith. I needed to have faith. And what I had to accept, of course, I have God. We don't have to talk about God necessarily, but whatever can give you faith. Faith happens in everybody's life. Religious, not religious, God, no God. If you're an atheist and you don't believe in anything supernatural, like, or higher powers or anything like that, whatever you want to say as an atheist, if that is you, you still have a sense of faith, and that's got to come from something. I know plenty of atheists. Because I went to college, and I used to love to talk to people and get to know about how other people think, and I was never afraid, even since high school, I was never really afraid to go into those topics, trusting that I knew how to handle it well. So for plenty of atheists that I know, their faith comes from this confidence in science. They think that's where it's come from, so that's what matters, what they're thinking. And so it comes from that, because they realize that science is teaching us, supposedly, that we have all of these different laws, right? Laws of fit. I love physics, chemistry. I love science. Actually, I love science. So if you want to understand what these little, all the little extra I'm doing about it, then we can talk about that in another conversation, because science is great for humans, civilization, and science can do a lot of things in our, like, in the micro, in our little personal lives. It can help us, like, having a scientific understandings helps us become better in many different ways. You would have to understand that science won't give it to you all, and it does actually not give you truth. It just shows you what is not true. Scientific method is about being able to disprove things as a way to get closer to the truth. But it doesn't actually point to what is the exact truth. talk to me about that in a different conversation. I just wanted to tell you what the topic is in case you're interested. But anyways, a lot of atheists I know are getting their sense of faith from like their confidence in science, right? And knowing that the universe works according to some laws. And so there's knowing that there's predictability, okay? And so having a sense of faith means like there's a lot of things that I don't have to keep track of. I don't have to understand it completely, but I know there's this web of all these things that are connected and that will affect each other. And so there's like principles, cause and effect. There's certain principles that people have internalized, and the understandings give them this sense of faith. Okay, so you can still have sense of faith even if you're atheist. But for me, sense of faith comes from God. And so my belief about purpose on my life is that God has a purpose for my life. I have faith that there is something I am supposed to do in this life. There is a being, a power that has made my life that way. And that's to give it to you blunt about where I am with the faith thing, but that became super important for me to be able to both design and build, do both at the same time. And that was super important in this whole journey. You can realize by now that I'm not just talking about high ticket sales. This is not just about high ticket sales. If you're watching this because you're considering high ticket sales, or if you're watching this because you're already in it, whatever, right? Like if you clicked and you're watching because you were more interested on what I had to say about high ticket sales, and now I'm doing all of this, I do apologize a little bit, but realize that high ticket sales is like this thing that fits into a bigger story for me. Okay, it's just a setting for one scene, maybe. And for you too, it may be the same exact thing. So don't get it confused. Even if it's huge life changer for you, understand that this career path can really just be like a small thing in your bigger story. Okay, that's probably the main thing you should take away from all the talking I've done so far in this video. In my life, I have being intentional about my career path has been super, super important. What you have to understand is I've been in sales. I took entrepreneurial path too, using my sales skills and stuff. I worked on other people's businesses, doing kind of like freelance. I've done some consulting, and then I've joined people's businesses, just trying to be like entrepreneur style type. So I've been around the entrepreneurship, just leveraging my sales skills. I went and learned marketing because I leveraged my sales skills to get into a marketing team. And then I joined like a bigger company, big tech company. And so I've done these different experiences that are really shaping me as a professional. But let me give you the timeline, because in 2024, at the end of 2024 in September, I joined a company that was completely different. It was in the oil industry. And the reason why I did that was because I was in this position where, I was in a position where I had been maybe like a year and a half after getting laid off from that big tech company. The tech industry went through, recession and everything. The tech industry itself was transforming. So COVID happened, and then a recession following, a straight up recession following. That was kind of like a depression even, that our government didn't want to admit, because, it was COVID. It still was what it was, economic slowdown. But the tech industry, if people remember, Elon Musk bought Twitter, which is now X, called X. It's no longer Twitter. And so then he fired everybody when he got there. But it wasn't just him. It was like a bunch of tech companies, the big dogs. Mark Zuckerberg did the same thing. Jeff Bezos at Amazon did the same thing, lay off a bunch of people. So you have these layoffs in tech. And once the big guys do it, all the small guys are doing it. So it reached the company I was with, and then they laid me off. Now I was at that company, and when I had my first baby, Nazi, my first daughter. Nazi's 4 years old now. And then when I was still at that company, after I get laid off, like shortly after I get laid off, then we find out we're having a second baby. So Now I have and then I have a second baby coming through. But I took that time to kind of really be with family a lot and like figure out what it meant for our household, and doing a lot of designing and building for my family and my household. And remember, I'm living out a dream of a younger Eli. By starting my family, like, I made it. I'm living out the dream of a younger Eli. I felt like extremely blessed and grateful, and I had all of that going on, and I knew that, yeah, you got to make money. I had money saved up, but I got to make money and get back to a career, and I felt like I was going to do my own business. Now, the cool thing was that when I went into that job, I did have something started with somebody, and that became a business partnership. When I say I had something started, I was doing some consulting work, and I was kind of pitching in on her business and stuff. And then what happened was, it got serious. She really needed somebody like really on there helping her with everything. Like, she almost went to zero and came to a place where she almost knew how to do nothing but one single thing, and it was take calls. And then when that wasn't even going well, it felt like she had nothing. So I came in there and made an offer to do a partnership. So while I was at this tech job, I started a partnership with this person. And so when I got laid off the tech job and I was focused on family a whole lot, I said, you know what, it'd be cool to try to see what I can do in this partnership and to really try to boost that up. Now, I realized that I needed a big money maker, right? Because I was used to making really good money, and I needed to provide for my family. This partnership thing wasn't necessarily a path to big money fast, but it was a path to have a business. And so I put my focus on that. I think it's possible to have just went all in on that business and made it become something where I could have a big enough income. Like, I think there was a path, and I can get into that later or in a different conversation about what happened with that partnership. But essentially, it wasn't a fit. Like, me and the person weren't a good fit, and I learned so much from that. But having the wisdom I wish I would have had in there was to be able to have the conversations that say, hey, we're not really a good fit. Here's some things that either have to change or will be the deal breakers. And I think that I have wisdom now, having going through what I went through and having to do so much reflection and now looking for new partners. Like, I have the wisdom, and it's clear that I need to have those conversations about what makes a good fit, what doesn't make a good fit, and is it possible that some things could change so that we become a good fit if we are currently not a good fit. So kind of diving into that a little more is the main thing I take away. But because what happened was, I said, you know what, I have this opportunity. I have family who's telling me about opportunity in the oil industry. So I said, let me go ahead and jump into that. And so I took, it's kind of like a labor job a little bit, specialized labor and stuff. So, it's not just, it feels like I was just the body when I'm working in this oil company. It feels like I'm just the body. But no, I mean, I'm a quick learner, solid worker. A lot of people, I think, come from white collar and they can't really adapt or transfer to the blue collar. Maybe because I come from like blue collar families and backgrounds and community and neighborhood. Maybe because I'm Mexican. But, I could work with my body too. It's totally fine. So like this job, it was a laboring thing, and it bothered me a lot that I felt like I was just the body and I wasn't using my other skills. But at the same time, it wasn't really that hard for me physically, mentally, or anything. It was kind of easy, and I was still able to make 6 figures. So I kept that job, and I ended up keeping it for 16 months. So I got the timeline kind of sketched out for myself here. And so I keep that thing for like about 16 months, from September 2024, and then just leaving earlier this year. January was my last month. So January 31st, my last day, I'm out from that company. And so that's 16 months. Let me kind of explain to you what kind of goes down there. And just make sure you understand real quick. So I go to that job because I can make great money. It's easy enough for me. Gives me the time and space to juggle things like running a family, trying to make a partnership work. Right? Like building a business is hard. And when you have someone else to do it with, it's supposed to make it easier. But you also have to make it work with that person and build that team chemistry and everything like that, right? So I'm juggling the family, I'm juggling the partnership, I'm now in this job, and so I'm busy. And going into the job, I knew I wouldn't be there forever, but I said, let me give it a real shot and see if this could be my career. I was willing to switch it up. What I really enjoyed was having like an easier time. In all the other jobs and everything else I did to work for money, it'd be more stressful. It'd literally be more work. Once I got used to doing this job that I was out in the field for, and don't get me wrong, like a lot of times, like I'm a representative for, so it was an inspection company, by the way, third-party inspection company. So we get hired by somebody and to like kind of be a referee in a transaction, essentially is what we do. Sometimes, and so when I'm showing up in the field, like I'm representing my company, I go to, refinery sites, I go to other spots that kind of look like refineries and stuff to people, but refineries where they make it. I would go to these other places and I would, that they're not making it there, they're just transporting storage, holding it. And I would also get on ships, dude, and deal with international companies and stuff. And I'm sharing this just to explain that it's an important role. It's an on-call, the job is on-call status. So there's not really a set schedule. That's the bad part. So a lot of people don't want to do it for that. But it's great money and it's not that hard. And for somebody who's smart enough, you get it quick. You can learn it quick and you can get good, and it just kind of becomes normal, just like any other job. It becomes easy. But yeah, anyways, I actually am an important person when I show up on those jobs. But I just always knew like there was something bigger to do, and I thought if this could be the path, then I'll take it. Never know what'll happen. I don't know the industry. It's a huge company that's actually international, so maybe the company will have opportunities for me once I am there. So I went in really open-minded. Within, I said, no way I'm staying more than 10 years in the job. But a few months into the job, I quickly reduced that down. I said, no, the limit is not 10 years. The limit is 5 years. And I think close to like, after my 6-month mark, I said, you know what, like this thing is easy. Like I could probably stay 5 years, but I'm starting to feel something. And what we have to understand is I was feeling like I wasn't fulfilled intellectually because I had all these other skills that I'm not using. And I had these ideas and I kept thinking about entrepreneurship. And it's like, I'm not intellectually fulfilled because I'm not working on those things. I'm not solving those problems. I'm not putting my mind and my brain to work on things that I want to. I like using my body. I didn't complain about that at all. I really like that. So I was also spiritually unfulfilled. I was also spiritually unfulfilled because like I wasn't making impact, and I felt like my life had to have more meaning. All the people I was around was not like any further reinforcement at all that I was on the right path. So I'm not really having good influences at work for what I really want. That's like misalignment. And then I'm not really like making the impact I really want. I try to like be good with my coworkers and like just be good to everybody I talk to, and I try to connect my work to like some impact and say, okay, if I'm helping make these transactions, then I'm very important to oil moving around in our country. It's coming in on ships into our port here at the LA Harbor, and then from there it's going through pipes and it's going to different facilities and it's getting sent all across the state and even to some other states. So it's like, and that's important because people need transportation, and a bunch of other products actually come from petroleum too that we don't really think about, but like a lot of plastics use petroleum products. And so when you think about that, you're like, man, a lot of stuff is made from plastics. So a lot of stuff can be traced back to what the petroleum industry and oil industry is doing. Anyways, I would try to make those connections, but I would be like, oh, feel good about myself. So what I was looking for was impact. I wanted to feel direct impact in people's lives. Remember, I come from sales where I'm having conversations and I help somebody come to a point where they say, you know what, this is the right move for my life. It's just scary because it's going to be a big change. you know, I was feeling it was like too risky. But after talking to you, like it's not that risky, but it is what I have to do, even if there's a little bit of risk. So, you know, I want to do this the right way. Let's go into this with your idea, what you're talking about, or can we do a little more? Right, when somebody gets to that point, oh, it's so magic, and I say, let's go, let's get it rocking. And to work for a company who actually does really well, delivering, it's so amazing to do sales work. Like it's fulfilling, you know, to see that impact in someone's life, and just being a part of that. And kind of, I thinking about me always growing up too is like being in sports and like helping teammates, or like I remember my dad coached baseball. I helped him coach my younger brother's team. So just like helping people learn, I freaking love it. Like just having impact in people's life, being the one who's serving and stuff. I was missing it. So I have these things that were pulling me away, but not necessarily pulling me away, but they had my mind out of the job, and that's gonna be natural for anybody. Okay, we all have interests outside of our work. So that was happening for me. And so at the 6-month mark, I'm like, you know what? It's gonna be 5 years or so, but I need to figure out a way out. So when you think about it, I'm only a few months into the job, and things are not going well with my partnership. So I end up having to cut that. I end that. So we go into 2025, and I'm already like, hey, we're gonna move in that direction. Let's figure out the best way to do it. Long story short, it gets a little toxic because she's not happy. She's not happy in general with the business, but it feels like she wants to blame me for it. And I'm saying, hey, I see the path forward. A lot of things she disagreed with me on, so it wasn't like we were on the same page about the path forward, but I still saw it. And I think it was just a challenge to get her to see the same thing. And instead, she was like just really upset with me. And I think she felt like I played her, and I was just there to take from her. But I had felt like she was taking from me, and she didn't want to compensate me fairly. And I understood that if the business was not yet in a place to compensate me fairly, and she couldn't compensate me fairly, then maybe she felt like I shouldn't be compensated at all, because it was my job to make sure that the business got to where it was supposed to be. But then that means that it was my responsibility and not hers. So to go through this and pretend like we're a partnership, but her put the responsibility on me to make it work, and say that, you know, it's like it became this weird toxic thing where I said, you know what, very abruptly I've said, we're gonna cut this, and this is how we're gonna do it. And I take my piece and you take yours. And it was tough to split up. It's really the first time I went through anything like that. But and it was sad, because damn, we could have been like a good connection for the most part, but just the struggle in business and her financial struggle besides me, before I got, because she had the business and went crashing, and like, man, all this this really tough. I'm only sharing this because it is emotional, and it's kind of like an end of a chapter, and I have no business anymore. I have no business. So anything that I was applying my entrepreneurial efforts to when I started that job in the oil industry, it was over. It was over within months, and that sucked. But what that had me thinking, though, in 2025, starting in early 2025, like, you know, March, I'm done with the partnership. So now my mind's really open, but I'm in that job, making my money, taking care of my family, leading my family, most importantly, is what I'm doing. I'm being very present father and husband. But I think about my next career move, and I'm thinking, okay, do I start another business? Do I start my own thing now? No partnership, just gonna go into something, or find a new partner or whatever. Do I start a business? Do I start my own business? Is that what I do next? Which business? Which industry? And it didn't matter, like, okay, maybe I don't start a business, but what is my career after this? Which industry? Is it oil? Do I stay in oil? So now I'm really asking myself these questions. And I remember like about maybe May, had to be, or June even, but maybe May and June, I really start getting clear. It's like, okay, I really only have 3 options. Option A is I stay in this job, and I see what this can lead to. So I just stay in this job and look for another opportunity within this company, or like some type of promotion in this same role, just maybe become a senior inspector. And so that's what I was thinking through. Like, option A is like kind of stay on this exact trajectory. Option B is to switch up a little bit, but not so much, because I'll stay in the oil industry. I'll just go to a different company and maybe do something like really different. So that was like another option. Option C was like, just do something entirely different than this now. So option A and option B were like highly based on on that job I was at that moment. But option C was like, just switch it up. And option C was scary because it was like, fuck, like start over type of thing. So I remember going through that type of thinking last year, 2025, about May and June. But what became clear was I needed to figure out like what my priorities are, what my preferences are. You know, priorities, like, of course, at the top is it has to be enough money. I mean, it don't gotta be $200,000 a year necessarily. Like, I don't have to start there to take the job, but I gotta have enough to pay the bills, provide for my family. So that's going on. And I kind of just came to that conclusion that it would not be oil. And just like really keeping it real with myself. And there's a whole lot of like practices and methodologies that I use to keep it real with myself. So let's talk about that another time. But I just came to that point where I was like, you know what? Thinking about what matters to me, I don't think oil is gonna be right. Like, I can look in oil and see if it works, but it's lower chances. Why not shoot for something else that I'm just more excited about and that have higher chances of allowing me to have my preferences and priorities? So that's kind of how I was thinking about it. And I was able to come up with a choice management system for myself, which meant I had like the bigger picture and doing what's important for the bigger picture, and then making commitments to those things, and then figuring out how to allocate time to these different things on a weekly basis. And then how do you manage a calendar and keep a schedule that complies to these priorities? And so I had this whole system of doing that. I call it choice management because time management is what most people call it. Just we don't actually manage time. We can't control that. What we can do is manage our choices within time frames. And what we see happen is I decide, after getting clear on all these more abstract, bigger picture things, I came across these 2 high-ticket sales opportunities. And one of them's for Christian men, and one of them's just like, they're a lot of Latinos, but it wasn't like necessarily for Latinos, just happens to be because one of the founders was, and that's kind of his audience and stuff. But what was really cool was, I mean, they were hyped and they were making money. It was just, it was speaking, the opportunity was speaking to what I wanted in life. Real quick, I need to check the time. Okay, it's only 11:30, so we good. We keep chopping through. So anyways, I come across those 2 high ticket sales companies. They're academies that will also give you placement. And that was super cool to me. Anyways, I go and justify my reasons. So in another conversation, I'm going to talk about how I went and made these decisions and how I thought through it all. But right now I'm trying to get through the timeline to help you understand there was a whole story. There was an unfolding of this thing. And I'd end up deciding that I wanted to go with Driven. I'm going to say the company name is Driven, okay? Instead of KCA, which was Kingdom Christians Academy, or no, Kingdom Closers Academy. That's what it was, Kingdom Closers Academy. One of the founders, Trey, and the other guy, Amon, or forgot his name, but those 2 dudes seemed real solid, real legit. The guy I talked to seemed nice and everything, but at Driven, they were just more pumped, and they were showing more proof of more money moving around, and they were showing more like successful salespeople than KCA. So I went with them. They brought me in person to their office, made great impressions, and I went. So I would go in July In July, for sure, I would be studying on their stuff. And in August, it would continue. But there was drama. I started to catch on. I said, what's going on here? And I started to try to network and get with people, but no one really knew what was going on. Then people start splitting off. I'm going to take off this way. No, it's not. It's all going bad. And this person's bad. It was crazy. Long story short, in a couple weeks, the whole thing shuts down. Everybody's gone. No one's selling for them. And no one's serving the clients that they had already sold. And it was just all messed up. All fucked up. And so I'm like, what the fuck is going on? At least I have my job and I'm making money. But I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this? I do what I got to do because I gave them money. So we working that thing out. I get my fair deal and everything. I work it out. But what comes next is like, what am I gonna do? And there was one guy who helped me get into Driven. He told me, hey, you should really rock with these dudes. And most importantly, Chris. And I said, I remember Chris. I met him that day in person. Okay, yeah, you should rock with him. I'm gonna make an introduction. I said, okay, cool. So he introduced us. We keep talking. Long story short on that one, me and Chris, we end up making a deal. And he brings me on the team. He's gonna give me coaching, mentorship, and I'm gonna be on his team. And so while I was still in my job for a few months, I was studying on his stuff. I was like doing personal development according to his methods. And then I was starting to work part-time towards the end of that year, 2025, and then going into 2026, I was doing like part-time work. I realized that part-time work wasn't gonna do much for me for what I was really wanting. And so I was gonna have to come to a decision between like drag this thing out part-time and make certain sacrifices in the short term, or just switch over full-time so I can see if I get real results and really just sacrifice the job and the guaranteed income as opposed to sacrificing anything else, any other standards like my health or my family standards. But I was kind of scared of that whole thing. In January, I felt something just overwhelming about that decision that I really just sat down, thought through it, talked to my wife. Like I literally spent like days where my mind almost never left the decision. I even told myself, I was like surprised about how hard it was for me to think through it. And it's mostly emotional and spiritual because my brain works really well thinking through things. But that goes to show you, for somebody who's a great thinker, they're still going to be held back, or they're still going to have trouble thinking through things. And it's not because of their logical brain, it's because of their emotional brain, and it's because of, right, their heart and their soul, the deepest things. I even got myself to say like, dude, I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of what my dad thinks. But I don't really care what my dad thinks about it, like in the sense of like, if he thinks I should do it or not, I'm still gonna decide on my own. So he's a great thinker that I like to bring into thinking with me, but he's not necessarily like my partner in life and making decisions and stuff like that. So I don't see him that way. But I was like, I need to talk to him because I need to prove to myself what I'm saying. I'm saying to myself that I will be independent of him and what he thinks. Let me talk to him and prove it. That was the real reason I needed to prove it. Anyways, I had that conversation and he's like, and it's a 2-hour conversation, dude, by the phone, because we couldn't find another chance to do it. And I was already close to that decision. So I was like, let's just have it. But by the end of the convo, he's like, sounds like you kind of already decided. And I guess, you know what? I said, you know what? I'm leaning strongly that way, that I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave BV. But I guess I'm not exactly decided. It's just leaning so much that way. You can tell. And, you know, I'm just holding myself back for now. Anyways, it's the day before my birthday. The day before my birthday, I go in and I have an offer letter from my boss. Not an offer letter, I'm tripping. Resignation letter. I go with my 2-week notice to my boss. Tell him, you know, I can only stay for this long. But because of family issues, I won't be on call anymore. Remember, that job was on call. No schedule. They just call me whenever they want to go work. told him I can't be on call anymore. And then this is my last day, January 31st. It was crazy. And I was sad about it. That was kind of the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to do. Once I said, I'm going to do this, it was like, fuck. Everything else is so clear, but I have to tell him, and I respect him, and I wanted to work with him. But yeah, that's kind of the story, how I ended up going full-time. And that was January. Now, in February, I still had a lot of focus on family. One of my wife's family members passed away, and so letting her grieve and kind of just being close with each other was something important in the family. So it was true, like the family situation at home was gonna ask more from me. That was gonna be hard for me to be on call. It was also gonna be hard for me to just jump into high ticket sales full time. But towards the end of February, I got up to a full 40 hours a week. And all of March, I did full 40 hours a week. Went into April and did a full, 40 hours a week until I got off of the offer. I was on an offer for about 6 weeks. Now I'm off because I guess, the direction that the owner wanted to move in and was misaligned with what I was looking for. And to be honest, he wasn't even clear or sure like what he's trying to do. So as he's figuring out, he's making changes. And I realized like, this is probably not the person that I want to work for. So I think it was definitely mutual. I don't like the way he went about it, but I'm not trying to say he's a bad person for it. I just think the leadership skills were missing. So, I mean, I can't be there for that unless he's going to approach this differently, because I do have the leadership skills. I got mad sales skills. I think we should, and I got other skills, tons of other skills. Dude, I know plenty of things for business that could really help. I'd be a solid team member. I didn't care to pinpoint what it is that didn't want him to make it work. I just said that, all right, well, if you don't care to have that conversation with me, I'm not going to go pushing it. And I just stopped. Crazy, I just stopped. But yeah, this kind of been my experience so far. This is the timeline. I wanted to share that with you because it's really about the whole story. Let me kind of go back though and explain something, because now I'm in a position, right, where I'm thinking about what do I do next? And I'm going all in on my personal brand first thing. Kind of what I wanted to do, but because some opportunities, high ticket sales roles, opportunities, they came up, I was like, all right, I'll jump on it. All right, I'll jump on it. And I'm like, let me see if I can make money. Let me shake off the rust, because I hadn't. And then I was like, let me just be the full-fledged salesperson I'm looking at myself to be. And I did it, not for too long, but for a good 2 months. So it was enough for somebody on my level. And then what I'm looking at is, okay, what am I going to do next? And so I came back to some notes and I looked at like, what was the whole goal for Driven? So I want to say, if I have this in my life, this thing with Driven, the company that ended up shutting down, right? That if I go to them, like, what am I looking to get out of this move? And I decided to make an investment, right, in myself, going to the academy, paying to get into the academy and get placement, get into roles through them. But what is the goal? What do I get in exchange for spending the time, money, the energy, right, and doing this thing? Number one was alignment. I wanted more alignment from my job. So that job that I had wasn't giving me everything I want. And that's gonna happen, that's normal. But what I saw was a limit to my alignment, really was a limit to my intentionality, because I had a limit on my autonomy. They had me on call. I'm not completely autonomous. They have me on call. So if they call me and they say, hey, we need you over here at this place in an hour, but I had other plans to do something with my kids, now like I'm choosing between continue my plans with my kids or keep my job. So it was crazy that things are not aligned. I think that's enough to say about that. I was looking for more alignment. If I can't be so intentional and say, hey, okay, I'm gonna use this time to be with my kids, I'm gonna use this time to work out for myself, I'm gonna use this time to work on something outside of my job. If I can't be that intentional with my time, because I'm on call, then at some point I'm going to be limited on how much alignment I can really have. And I can work around that limit and try to improve my life and get more alignment in other ways. But ultimately, I can do more if I didn't have that limit. So I was like, what is the path that is going to help with that? And I want a better situation, not the same or worse, but better. But speaking on numbers, like income, right? Super important, the money. I wanted to double my income, right? So of course, everyone wants to make more money. If I didn't start out making more money, that was okay. I could start out making less money, but eventually the goal is like, I got to double my income. I want to make double. I want to get to $250,000 a year, 250,000 annual income. So that's where I wanted to get to. And then I wanted to also be able to take all this extra income and invest into assets. So I was not thinking like, let me improve like my living standards necessarily. Of course, like the kids are growing up, there's going to be things to do for the family and the household. So we might see expenses increase, but they won't increase that much because we're not like looking to improve a whole lot on living standards. So a lot of money I'll be able to keep from doubling my income. How much money is that I can keep? Wow, like I might be able to save $10,000 a month and I can invest that. And the idea was like, if I could invest into assets that provide passive income, then I wouldn't need to work for money, and then I have all my time to be able to do what I want, and like all the impact I want to make and everything I want to do for my family and my own health. Like all these different things could be achieved because I would have all my time to do it. So it's kind of like reaching early retirement would be the goal there. But for sure, it all begins with having a big enough income so you have a big enough surplus to invest in assets that produce passive income. And when you have enough assets to produce enough passive income, now you have like 100% financial freedom all the time. Now you have to maintain the security of those assets to make sure you maintain the passive income. But in that position, I would be able to live my best life. I'd be able to reach self-actualization, be completely who I am, who I'm supposed to be, who I want to be. And one big thing for me, if I was living in that life already, was a lot of my time would be used for community development. One thing that I've said before, one way that I always talk to myself about it, and I'm probably going to talk more about it in other videos, is my tribe and building a tribe. And I think about it like literally building like a tribe, the way we think about people, like community. Like we live in neighborhoods and call this the community and stuff, but some of the neighbors I don't really even talk to. Or like have connection to, besides we live on the same block. I'm looking over at the other building, like besides living on the same block, some of these people I don't have a connection to. At least I don't know it too much. But I want a tribe where we are more connected than this. And I grew up in a big extended family. We'd all get together for parties and different types of celebrations and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I crave that, you know. I want that, and I want tribe. And somewhere else, I started talking to myself about what impact I want to make in people's lives. That seems to be an important question for me to answer. This tribe thing was like a category of the impact. I want that in my life. I want to create that for my kids. I want that to exist for future generations somehow, somewhere. How would I go forming the tribe, or how would I go impacting the tribe? And there was two main things I became clear with immediately, and it was number one is I want to influence our people towards healthy lifestyles, because health is wealth, right? And the family I come from, and many other families, American families or Latino families, like, are not that healthy. Don't eat that much, don't exercise that much, social dynamics not as healthy as they should be. So having healthier lifestyles is something that's super important for me to bring to my tribe. But the other thing was about accumulating and preserving enough wealth for our people. Family assets that are owned collectively, individuals' assets, right, which are owned by the earners, people who go out and work, get the money to acquire the assets, or work to just acquire it without the money part. skip earning money and just acquire the asset. But that's an earner's thing. As individuals, some people in the family may not be big earners or anything like that, so it's not that they will be owning assets individually, but so long as they're a productive tribe member, they're gonna be all right, because we got family assets, right? But we have tribe assets as well. So families have their assets, individuals have their assets, and then the tribe will have assets that makes it all work, makes all the families and individuals operate financially, and it helps the families work together economically. Anyways, these are some of the things that I was thinking about when I thought about the goals for going into high ticket sales. And from here, what I gotta figure out is if I'm just gonna try to look for my next offer on high ticket sales, or if I'm just gonna create my own offer, jump in that way. I know that I'm gonna focus on personal branding. So I'm gonna put in a lot of work this week as we go into May. And in May too, I'm gonna put in a lot of work to just produce content, put it out, engage with people. And I will, from that, begin to talk to people within my network, kind of see if there's opportunities for me to jump in on, but being clear with myself about the impact I want to make gives me some options to go and create my own offer. For example, one of the things I wrote down here was meal plan and prep service. It's something that I would like to have for my household. So I imagine it's something that other people would like to have. And I think it's something great. Like if I could help other families do their meal prep, then I have influence on their diet, on their nutrition, on their eating habits. So I could impact my tribe by doing that type of business. So I think about things like that. I also have thought about going into the fitness, health and wellness space and stuff like that. Maybe I create an offer there. So just thinking of these different things. Since I know sales, maybe I go and help people with sales in their business. I have leadership, and I love operations. Maybe I just go do consulting and stuff like that. So personal branding is for sure what I'm gonna be doing. And I wanna see if I can create my own offer and find some traction there. But ultimately, I have sales skills. I can go back to a sales role, right? So I can make some money, pay the bills. You never know. Maybe joining someone else's company as a sales professional is a route to really big money. Maybe I can hit the $250,000 annual income doing it that way. But what would be best is if I could start building my own business. So why not try to do that first? Stay tuned. See where I go next. Oh yeah, hold on. I'm down to show this real quick. So this is where I wrote down my goals. I want alignment. I want to double my income. I want to invest into assets for passive income. I want to achieve 100% time freedom while providing household income and cash flow for investment. I want to do community development, right? It's in order. It's like, first of all, have alignment, then double my income, then I can have a bunch of money to invest. And once I have enough passive income, I have 100% time freedom. And then I can focus on community development, which is like building my tribe. Health and wellness, that's a big part to it, and financial planning. That's probably how I will start. Right, on this page, I started to talk about that, what the impact I wanted to make, because I need to become more clear about it. But this is kind of like a cool little diagram. This is the main point I wanted to share. Well, this is the timeline I was going through. So like I started at BV in September. I ended the partnership. I'm thinking of my next career move, start my own business. Which industry though? Even if I'm not going to start my own business, if I'm going to make a different career, which industry is that going to be? I need priorities and preferences, which ultimately led me to conclude that it's not going to be oil. And then coming up with a choice management system that really kind of governs my decisions and how I spend my time. I know for sure I jumped into high ticket sales. That's in the summer of last year. I go in with Driven doing like part-time studying, but when that all crashes apart, I'm still doing studying, but I then join Chris's team. And I do part-time work, but I'm planning to leave at the end of the year. I'm already thinking, man, I'm gonna have to leave. It's just a huge decision to leave that income. So in January, I'm just like, in December and January, I'm like, what the fuck? But I leave BV in January. And I spend a total of 16 months there. And then I go full time in high ticket sales. And so what the story is that like, I want to produce I want personal income to get high enough. Like right now, I was already making 6 figures at that job, but I wanted it to get to 250, okay? And what you gotta understand is this is your personal income. I'm trying to grow my personal income, and it's just feeding my finances in a sense. Like money's coming in, my income, and my income pays expenses. This is income, this is expenses. Some expenses really have no effect on the future. Like if I pay rent to live here, then I pay rent for the month is over, I pay rent for the next month, but no other effect after that month is happening for that rent. So some money is just kind of getting thrown out the cycle is what people say. It's not necessarily the worst thing, because sometimes money goes to liabilities, and then those liabilities create more expenses, which sometimes are a waste anyways. So what's worse than just having money thrown away? To have money spent on something that's going to make you throw more money away. And that's where the vicious cycles are. Now sometimes you have to have liabilities, so we do get those sometimes. Now over here you have a cushion. So as some of my money is not getting spent, then it's being held in cushions. I'm trying to like make sure that my check-ins never goes to zero. And then I have an emergency fund, so out of mind, out of sight, and a high yield savings where you can earn a little interest, earn a little money for staying in there. I have 3 months worth of expenses. I think at first for me, that meant like 12,000, and then it meant like 15,000. But eventually I was like, let me have even more than that. And then you have short-term goals that you might want to achieve, like I needed to buy a car for work at some point. I'm gonna need to get new furnitures in the house because we've had this stuff for a long time. So you have vacations that we want to go together on the family. So we have short-term things that we save for, but business funding, huge part of the money to be able to do business funding, and long-term, mid-term, and retirement savings. Thinking about savings that don't fit into these, typically more long-term, like 5 years at least into the future. But business funding, super important, right? Because I want to have money to do business. When you think about savings, you have to have a savings rate. So out of your income, what percentage are you able to save? If I'm making $100,000 in a year and I'm able to save $10,000 that year, that's a 10% savings rate. How does that get split up, right? My goal was to always be above 10%, and I was able to hit 20% on most months. Some months even 25%, but most months 20%, right? And always above 10. I think in the beginning was the only time that I wasn't above 12 or 15. But my savings rate's going to get split up, right? Some chunk of it's going to go to the short-term savings, some chunk of it's going to go to business funding, and the other chunk's going to go to all the other savings, whether it be long-term, mid-term, right? Long-term in retirement, so long, far out, it's kind of the same thing. And with business funding, what would that mean, right? I web that out and say, okay, that money is going to sit first in my company account. My company is Ambition Support, so it's going to sit in the main check-ins account for the company, and that'll get split up because I want some of the money to be budgeted for doing marketing, and it would be marketing for this company, or just marketing for any business that I do, or marketing services even. But I want to make sure some money goes to marketing, because marketing is always important, and then some money goes to an investment group. So thinking of how to grow money, how to park money and grow it, is what this is about. So if I'm going to do that for myself, of course, I can help other people do it too. But that's how I was thinking about business funding.